they say that are symptoms. Oh, we're recording.
I
Um,
forgot to record.
dang, sorry. Um, Most things they say are symptoms that just feel like normal people traits. This self-advocate sibling and friend said there's not always the recognition that the severity, frequency, and distress caused by these behaviors is important to keep in mind. So people are pretty upset about this. And yes, this is another one of those topics that it was more commonly the self-advocates who were speaking up about this than family members, friends, support staff. So here's another checkpoint. I think these last two sections are going to be a little bit longer just because I run some extra analyses, but I'm happy to check in if you guys have questions. Oh, something's in the chat. Surprised there were any positives. Yeah, fair. I really didn't want this project or this presentation to seem like I'm ragging on TikTok because I really do believe a lot of these positives. Like I was saying with this patient I had today, I was thinking of this project and saying, wait, this is a kid, he's 14. He might really appreciate some representation of someone with a diagnosis and a diagnosis similar to him accomplishing big things. And all those other things people say. So I didn't necessarily think very positively of TikTok before this project, but I use this project to sort of elevate the voices of the people that are speaking through it. Do I feel like the positives outweigh the negatives? Ooh, as a researcher, I feel like I shouldn't say a firm opinion there. I I really do think that it's important for us, and I sort of was going to say this a little bit more in the conclusion, but we in this chat are in the autism community, whether it's people we love, people we work with, or ourselves. Uh, I think we're responsible for getting other people who are outside the community a little bit more of a well-rounded approach. So people who just think negatively, I like to say a little positive to them, and people who think positively, I like to mention the dark side a little bit. That's my take. I think if I really had to pick one, mm, I'm not gonna. I'll say at the end. I'll say at the end. Yeah.
Regarding that slide that you had with the young lady who was a superstar now,
Do you know
she
her?
no, I don't
Oh
watch
yeah.
the show.
She's awesome. Yeah.
So she got so many likes. So you were saying that that clip was about her having a meltdown,
Right.
and she got so many likes. Did you get so many likes because people are trying to understand autism? Like that's how I would I would guess that's why.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I think there's a bunch of reasons why people will throw a like on a video, right? Some people might just say, I appreciate this content. I appreciate that this content is out there. Or, yes, I'm interested in this. I want to see more of this, and I'm curious about this. This was enlightening for me. I'm checking in the group. She comes from a super wealthy family. Yeah. Um,
See, no, I just made a
it's true
comment
that
to someone
millions
recently
throughout.
that
Mhm.
I don't like that show. I watched it once or twice and it was very upsetting to me.
Yeah.
But the fact that that was shown and people understand that that could happen makes me happy as a parent
Mm.
because the more people understand, the more they'll be accepted. You know, like my daughter having a fit in a restaurant because she's waiting too long. You know, like it's real life stuff that happens every day for us, and it's easier to deal with when you get an understanding. People around you are more understanding of the situation.
And yeah, I think that there are a lot of issues with love on the spectrum, right? And I think they're really similar to issues that are coming up with this project as well. And one thing love on the spectrum really does do is draw attention to autism. It builds awareness, which does that thing where next time Alexa's having a tantrum somewhere, people might be more understanding because they've seen autism on love on the spectrum. I'm seeing more in the chat. I'm a social media coordinator. Cool. Always have conversations about posts and the glorification. Yeah, it's a difficult topic. It really is because you nothing's black and white, right? We want to show these people that there are strengths to having autism, right? I can't express to you the amount of times I've learned something from someone with autism because of the way they look at the world. And then, but we also don't want to glorify that thing because it comes with a bunch of challenges and it's really difficult. So there's two sides to everything like that, and it is tough, especially on social media where everything's just a quick tidbit to really emphasize there's good and there's bad. I don't think they show the negative long term of the failed relationships. Yes, Gina. Yeah, I think they like a happy ending on Love on the Spectrum. The thing that bothers me with TikTok is the commentators say they don't look autistic. I think this brings awareness to how it presents in different ways. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is definitely true. And you'll see in a comment left by one of our study participants later on, they call some of the people fakers. So it's true. There's this idea of masking in autism where people get so good at imitating social interaction that it seems like they fully understand the nuances of them when really they're struggling. And that has come up a lot on TikTok as an idea. Okay, I love the conversation. I'm going to move forward, and there's more conversation at the next checkpoint at the end. I love it. So now I'll talk a little bit about accuracy. So this comes in the form of three of the topics in this positives collection. People felt it was informative. In this negatives, people felt it was misinformation. So the information is incorrect or misleading. The information's not quite incorrect, but not correct. It's kind of leading people down a path that's not so good. This self advocate said there's a lot of good stuff on there. People are backing their thoughts with research papers, sometimes even cited or linked. This researcher said this content's really informative. It gives me insight to people's thought processes, obstacles, triumphs. And the blue, I'm using blue to tell you that these are sort of in the positives group. And now I got some reds. So, a behavior analyst and teacher said, I'm concerned that this may mislead individuals with autism and their families about effective interventions and what should be used in today's world. ABA specifically, applied behavioral analysis, has come under a lot of scrutiny on TikTok. So maybe that's what they're referring to. This psychologist left it plain and simple, unverifiable, and anecdotal. I don't think they were thrilled. I think that was their whole comment, too. Fair enough. They're upset about this. This researcher said there seems to be a lot of misinformation. It might cause clinicians to be discredited with understanding ASD. And this is a sentiment shared by 17 people in this diminished clinician trust category. There are people out there who see autism TikTok content and they think they know more than people who see autism every day. A lot of times doctors are wrong about autism, right? People know their loved ones with autism very well. And I think sometimes it's difficult to deal with healthcare professionals in that way. But there is, I think, a danger where we have a lot of people seeing autism online or potentially autism fakers online and thinking that they know more about autism than people who do see it every day, whether that's a doctor, a teacher, a psychologist, support staff, whatever it may be, or parents who are just seeing a bunch of this in the community. Oh, I put this slide in today. I figured I'm talking about my research, but there was some other good research that came out last year. They found that when they analyzed all the TikTok autism content that they searched through, 27% was accurate, 41% inaccurate, 32% they called overgeneralized, which I think is probably similar to our misleading. Of note, there were no significant differences in engagement. So whether or not a video was accurate or inaccurate, it actually didn't affect how many likes and views it got. I thought this was an interesting comment. This was left on my survey now, so back to our stuff. What I've seen is very educational, coming from autistic people with varying degrees of autism. I've learned about how autism affects their interactions, sensations, information processing. It's really helped me expand my view and understanding of autism. This is the one person who filled out our survey who has no relation to autism. And I think this was filled out with great intent, and I appreciate their response. But in those check boxes, they did not say, I have autism. They didn't say, I'm a family member, a friend, a clinician, support staff. There was a box for other. They didn't fill that out either. So you got to imagine this is a person who has no real world understanding of what autism is, and they're just getting this information from TikTok. So hopefully this information is good, but how can they really know? So this brings us to this idea of accuracy. How concerned are we about this? If you guys remember, I have this little slider And I said, are you guys concerned about the accuracy of autism related info on TikTok? I let everybody fill this out. And it's sort of like I assign 0 to not concerned, 100 to very concerned, and 50 to a little concerned. So everyone filled out this slider in all different ways. The average fell around there in the sort of mid 60s. And then I wanted to see what groups, you know how I like to compare groups. So I wanted to see what made people more concerned or less concerned about this, right? So the first thing I thought was age. I thought older people, they're going to say, oh, TikTok's for the kids. I'm worried about all this. They weren't more concerned. Wasn't true, at least from what I found. People with a professional or non-professional relationship with autism. So I'm talking like support staff versus family members, people with autism. No difference. So there was a question where I asked, have you seen TikTok content or not? People said yes or no. And that didn't make a difference as to how concerned they were, which I thought was interesting. I also had an experience variable. So I asked people how long they've worked with people with autism. That also didn't
Oh,
make a
I
difference.
have.
So that would be a good idea. We've never tried that, though, Steve.
Okay, thank you so much. So we, let me see. Okay, so I did find a difference when I looked at people with autism, people who have given autism diagnostic assessments, and everybody else. So I split this apart because I honestly thought the autism diagnostic assessment people would be the most concerned out of anyone. But what I found was these two groups, so people with autism and people who've given a test to diagnose autism, like an ADOS, they were similarly concerned, right? These bars are pretty similar to each other. When you compare this bar to this bar, so autistic people, everybody else, they're more concerned about the accuracy of the autism information. These two bars, I think if I got more people in my study, would be statistically significantly different. This is getting really close to 0.05, which is when I call it and I say this isn't due to chance, this is a real result. But we're not quite there. This is definitely there. We've got a lot of people in these groups. So I can confidently say people with autism are more concerned than the others about autism on TikTok, but they're not more concerned than our ADOS administrators. So now I'm bringing this in because I'm like, why is this important, right? Like, why does this matter? Who cares that this information is accurate? And I thought this was a really cool essay in the New York Times from 2023. I'm going to read this excerpt. Disorganization can be ADHD, social ineptitude can be autism. This approach provides quick relief from many of the anxieties central to teenage and young adult life. Am I weird? Is something wrong with me? Is this normal? When labeled, what makes you wince isn't your fault, and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's what makes you unique. But flattening mental health labels into little more than personality test results risks the chance that our culture will take these conditions and the people who claim to have them less seriously. So this is sort of touching on the things that we were talking about before. And I think back when I think of these challenges of teenage and young adult life, right? This is identity development. And when people are thinking to themselves, maybe I'm not so good at this, it might feel comforting to have a label like autism when actually they're not autistic. So I think about that age group from the beginning, people 13 to 17 years old. I think over 60% of them are on TikTok. There more than half of them are certainly seeing this stuff. And then we have a self-advocate from our own study who said a very similar thing, which I thought was incredible. This person gave us paragraphs, and I feel very thankful to these participants who really poured their heart and soul and kind of wrote an essay for us. This content reduces the image of autism to nothing more than a synonym for being eccentric and or socially awkward, and this will erode what public awareness of and support for things like workplace disability accommodations exists among the general neurotypical population. And you guys can continue reading in there. I'm going to highlight the end here. This has necessitated a practice of self-diagnosis, which TikTok discovers and spreads. So anyone who identifies with the quirky, eccentric, socially awkward pop culture definition of autism can self-diagnose and try on autism as an identity for a while, distorting public perceptions of what autism actually looks like even further. So now it's a checkpoint. And I know I sort of planted the seed about self diagnosis. We are going to get much more into that in a second. So if your questions are specifically about that, maybe hold off. But if you have other ones about, especially about the accuracy analysis here, I'm super open to talking about that, hearing what you think. But this will probably be the biggest section at the end here. Oh, it's 7:46. So maybe I'll start it now and we'll save some questions at the end. Okay. Self-diagnosis. So another quote from a self-advocate. Online communities are overrun by self-diagnosed people who don't actually struggle with the same things that I struggle with. Additionally, I'm a young woman and I find people are increasingly likely to doubt my diagnosis and assume I am a self-diagnosed trend follower. So people are saying my own diagnosis isn't having as much credit now. So what did people say in our survey? 8 out of our 148 mentioned it in a positive light, and 48 mentioned it in a negative light. 48 people is so many to bring this up. Um, what fascinates me is all I asked was, what are your thoughts on this content? And 56 people came out and said, I'm thinking about self-diagnosis. So this is really prevalent stuff. Support staff and friend. Too many people self-diagnose because of some behavioral traits they found. And if they have those traits, they say, OMG, I didn't even realize this thing makes me autistic. This self-advocate said, I think these worries are overblown. Teenagers can be gullible, sure, but the vast majority of people, including social media adult teenagers, which I was once, do not just self-diagnose lightly. Our participants, by the way, all had to be over 18. A parent said, I think self-diagnosis is a valid first time in treatment. This parent may be saying something like, maybe these symptoms on TikTok resonate with you. And then you went to your doctor and said, hey, could I get a diagnostic test and see if I really meet these criteria? The self advocate said, I dislike the widespread acceptance of self diagnosis. I think it would be better if this content highlighted how many symptoms are also symptoms of other things and to take a more comprehensive view of mental disabilities and illnesses in general. I think this is very well said. And it's also a perfect segue to what I did. So I think it's a really great thing that this person wrote in my survey. I did a quantitative part of my study, which means a more numbers based part, where I wanted to learn a little bit more about the symptoms, right? There's a bunch of symptoms that people are talking about on TikTok. Are these legitimate? So I searched by these hashtags in June 2020, 2022, and any videos that mentioned symptoms that had over 1 million views or over 300,000 likes, all but one of the 18 videos had both actually. I took those symptoms and I wrote them down. I got 52 symptoms. Some of them were repeated, some of them were just in one video. And I shared the survey to the people that I mentioned earlier. I actually have a nice formal list here. I think there's some more than this, but this covers the brunt of it. I know we have some friends from PS60 here tonight, from Grace here tonight. I really appreciate all you guys. And I'm sure a bunch of you are in these Facebook groups. So, something I asked everyone at the beginning of the survey was these three questions. I can't see my first one, but I think it's how many years have you worked with people with autism? How many days in a typical week do you work with them? And how many people with autism do you work with? If people answered two or more to all these questions, they unlocked a secret part of the survey. And that's when I went through the 52 symptoms that I isolated from TikTok. And I didn't tell them they were TikTok symptoms. I just said, how relevant is this to autism? And, they go down the list. They say, well, walks on toes. I'd probably say very relevant, maybe relevant, right? Sensory things. This is pretty common in autism, relevant. But maybe unable to ride a bike. I'd say a lot of people with autism struggle to ride a bike for sure. It doesn't mean you have autism. It doesn't feel super relevant. So I might say somewhat relevant or not relevant. Then I did the same list and I said, okay, check the box if this symptom sounds like it could be related to another diagnosis. So maybe something related to ADHD, OCD, these kinds of things, right? And what I got was this. And I know this is a very intimidating, crazy slide, right? But it's really the most fun slide, I like to think. Uh, you basically take a symptom. So let's take this guy, MM. Okay, and then you look over here at the key attached to particular objects. This is pretty common in autism. I know my sister had a Pooh Bear that she was attached to for years. One time, my cousin's dog ate her Pooh Bear, ate the shirt up, and we took all the pieces of the shirt out of the dog's mouth, and my grandma had to sew the shirt back together. So this is definitely something that a lot of people might think is relevant to autism. It sort of fell between somewhat and relevant. Uh, but it also, more than half of people said this is relevant to something else, right? Like this could totally, some people who are psychotic might have attachments to particular objects. Some people with trauma history might be attached to particular objects, right? So you look at this and you say, okay, it's a big glob in the middle. Not really a lot of things hanging out in the corners. What this tells me is that all these things mentioned, they could be relevant, they could be relevant to something else. So if we find the perfect autism symptom, which doesn't exist, it would be very, very relevant. So it would fall over here and it would not be relevant to something else. So we'd want it to be hanging out down here. If you guys are statisticians, you'll care about my standard deviation. Um, but you want to look down here, right? So the closest thing is maybe N, N. Does not look at the person talking to them. So eye contact, kind of a classic autism deficit. Um, so it is sort of heading toward that corner. But lack of eye contact, totally an avoidance thing in PTSD, totally people with anxiety disorders, social anxiety, right? So it might be indicative of something else. If you look in this corner, you'll find, yeah, it's relevant to autism, but also other stuff. Why? Overwhelmed in environments with lots of people. I'm thinking agoraphobia. I'm thinking social anxiety, autism for sure. Sensory things. It could be really overwhelming to be in environments with lots of people, especially social difficulties. So makes sense that it's in that corner. Up in this corner, we're going to see things not so relevant to autism, but maybe relevant to other stuff. So C, hyper focused episodes of cleaning, totally an OCD thing, right? Um, and for sure, some people have both autism and OCD, but that is not purely an autism symptom. It can be, but it makes sense that that guy's up there. And down here is sort of the fun stuff that is not relevant to autism, not relevant to something else, probably what the participant earlier was calling normal people traits. WW uses thumb instead of finger to touch things. That one's just kind of random, maybe. Rubs feet together in bed. I do that sometimes. CC recognizes a song from far away. I can't say I have a diagnosis for that, but that sounds like a strength, you know? I mean, I guess some people with autism, they'll have some sensitivity to sound, right? If a plane is passing overhead, some people might be bothered by that, overstimulated. But recognizing a song from far away, I'm not sure how appropriate that is. So that's my project. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was sort of a passion thing because I care about what's out there because I think it really does affect us as people in this community, as clinicians in this community, as advocates. This stuff matters. So I am basically, there's good, there's bad, and there's in between. So as I was saying before, I think it is in a way on us to sort of elevate these voices and say, state that this is not all black and white, that there is some gray in here. There are goods and there are bads. And I think it's fun for us to be the voice that speaks about this to our friends that might not know so much. I'm recognizing subsets in practice. Yeah, like subpopulations, tremendous numbers. Yeah. There's a lot of women with autism out there, even though I guess numbers in history have ranged from like 8 to 1 boy to girl versus 5 to 1. Let me see if I have any other slides here. Oh, oh yeah, that's my reminder to tell you to give others perspective on this. Don't let people think about things black and white because this stuff is not black and white. And yeah, I guess what have you seen? What have you heard? What surprised you here? And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you guys taking an hour. I know that life is so busy, and a huge thank you to the Phosphag Lab at Seaver Autism Center who helped me and worked on this with me. My co-writer Miles was really, really helpful.
Any other questions or discussion? We do have a little bit more time, Michael.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah.
Oh, I have a question.
What's your question?
I have a question. What do
What
you
is it?
see?
I saw that TikTok autism has some strengths, some
Um,
weaknesses, and some things about it were kind of confusing for people.
Do you have a question, Anson?
Ooh, graph. Is graph cool?
I
Yes,
think
that's
the
a
graph
cool
is
graph.
cool. Oh, you just said cool
I
graph.
think it's
Thank
a
you very much.
graph. Is it true?
Very good. Yeah. I'm glad you like my graph. I tried to make it
If we have
easy to
time,
understand and
I don't
colorful.
want to rush the children
Okay, and I think Gina, you have a
that.
question?
What I was trying to say before is because I'm seeing so many kids right now from the ages of 3 years old all the way through adulthood, I'm starting to recognize true subsets in the way that they actually present.
Hmm.
So many of our kids who are completely nonverbal, severely apraxic, are the toe walkers, no crossing of midline, a lot of side to side movement. And I could see that in the 3 and 4 year olds, and I could tell you what they're going to look like. I'm almost certain of what they're going to look like as adults.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think that sort of gets into the causes of autism thing, which we're not going to get fully into.
right.
But what we do know about autism now is it's a collection of things, right? Like no person with autism looks the same because their autism is probably caused by a slightly different thing. So you might be recognizing subsets and sort of pathways that are affected, which is cool.
Right. That's exactly what I'm thinking I'm seeing.
I
I
love
think
it,
I'm seeing
Gina.
those are the people who don't they're not integrated reflexes. Um, and I can see the kids who are better motor developed actually are developing the language better. They may be more language disordered. Um, so, and from there is like where I'm seeing like what looks to me like more autistic, uh, stereotypical things that you're seeing, like the eyes peer to the side, and then being able to actually speak to some of these nonverbal adults and teenagers now because they're able to use spell to communicate or they use their iPads and they're actually able to tell me why they do these things and how they feel is actually is so incredible. And to actually if we could ask them what they think about these, because I think from the outside they look like the low functioning higher needs, and they are higher needs because they have so many difficulties on other ways. But what do they think when they see these TikTok videos?
Yeah, and I really wish I understood my survey population a little bit better, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what I wanted to do is get a lot of responses because I think that gives you some power, but I wasn't really able to interview them individually. I wonder about these people with autism that filled out my survey. There's a ton of them, and I think a lot of them were through Autism Science Foundation, Grace Foundation, but we've seen nonverbal people with autism ending up spelling to communicate and graduating to typing in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's potential that we had some nonverbal participants, right? And they
Possibly, yeah.
might type completely eloquently, and I never would guess that they're nonverbal, but maybe they're in there. I wish I could say for sure. I didn't have a question about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is
Um,
that is
I
into those subtypes, yeah.
I have a question.
Hmm.
So I've experienced a lot of self-diagnosed people in my life, and I've seen them diagnose themselves in real time. And something that I noticed is a lot of it is sort of like based on a negative perception on how they view autism. So it's like, oh, like I don't have friends, or people don't like me, or people say I'm rude. But through all the people who I've met who've had autism, they all seem like they have friends, they're not rude, yada yada. And then in the same time, I see these people make fun of other people who have autism for showing traits. What my main question is, what are your thoughts? Have you ever met these kinds of people? What are your thoughts on people who are specifically like this? Not all self-diagnosed people, but the people who take things where it's like, oh, people who are autistic, they're social recluses, they don't have any friends, they stay at home all day, they can't do anything, and then use that as a way to diagnose themselves.
Yeah, I think, someone who's staying by themselves all the time, doesn't have any friends, they're probably down on themselves for that, right? Like it probably doesn't feel so good to be in a position like that. And if they take the autism label, whether or not they have autism, I don't know. But if they self-diagnose, if they say, yeah, I have autism, it might give an explanation to why their life is like this. And I think that might feel good for them. Them making fun of other people with autism, I never like. Definitely shouldn't do that, right? And I think it's also a testament to, so many people with autism having so many friends. And I honestly use the term social deficit, but this is sort of the science term. And I want to emphasize that it's really beautiful that because of the programs that have been started, there's so many ways autistic people get together and form such meaningful friendships. So maybe a person like that is hoping that they end up in a community like that, because the autism community is really strong and people are really helping each other and being there for each other and making such important friendships. That was a really nice question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Don't be shy. I'm not even on TikTok.
I don't bite. I couldn't if I wanted to.
But
It's like,
I'm get I think that when Alexa was first diagnosed, 28 years ago, it was like the Rain Man. Everybody thought of Rain Man, So I think we've come a long way because of social media.
mhm.
So maybe it's like I guess it's helping the
Yeah,
awareness for sure.
some people
I'm
will
not
say,
on.
Rain Man, back then you had one representation of autism, and now on TikTok they have videos of 100. So there is more variation in there, right?
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
have
I'm not on
a
TikTok either, but
question,
I'm
Michael.
on. I see all the stuff
Mhm.
on I see
I
most of the
hear
stuff on
two people.
Instagram, not
Okay.
from TikTok. So
Instagram
I'm
Reels
familiar.
generally has similar content.
Yeah. So I see most of that stuff, but I am concerned about all of the people who are the self-diagnosed, because and I read it somewhere along the line, and I forgot which book I read it in, that you could have a bunch of the symptoms or traits of autism, but unless they affect you in a way that it impedes your life, you're not
Hmm.
autistic, and you're not
Right.
like disabled by it in any way, shape, or form. It could just be a trait you have. You could have a bunch of traits that fall into many different diagnoses, but if they don't truly affect you in any outcome of your life, I
Yeah.
really, it kind of it
And
does a little bit concern me because it does bring down and I the way people feel about they're overshadowing the more profound, and the fact that now we have to have so many of our advocacy has to be more on differentiating the profound from the extremely milder high needs versus low needs,
I
and
am hearing
some of this
about
is
that,
very
Gina.
concerning to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's like a new thing that I heard in the last month going on
Yeah.
with the profound autism.
Yes,
yeah,
because they feel unheard because
Right.
of what's happening, because of all this self-diagnosed level, high level. Now there's twice exceptional. There's all these new diagnoses they're
specifically for
using.
the I could speak for, like, with experience at the Seaver Autism Center. So
Mm-hmm.
first of all, yes, the DSM-5, which is what psychiatry goes by,
Mm-hmm.
they diagnose autism if it impacts your functioning, right? So
Yes.
if you have these traits but it doesn't impact your functioning, technically the definition of autism you wouldn't meet. But some people would obviously argue, I'm still autistic, I'm on the spectrum, that kind of thing. Uh, what I will say about profound autism is that I think this term was coined because at a lot of autism conferences and things, people would, there's this neurodiversity, which I think is really important, right? Like we want to emphasize that there are strengths that come with different ways of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
but then people felt like you shouldn't be researching autism, you shouldn't be looking into maybe cures. And now there's just an argument around, well, if we talk about profound autism, they're maybe safer in applying for those grants and doing those things. So I think the profound autism thing is kind of on the research front pretty pretty commonly used now. I see Bernardo Rivera has a question.
I have I like the way your style is with um putting out there what is a person who has autism and who doesn't have it. But my perception is I'm a person that has a friend who is autistic, and she is a higher function autistic child,
Mhm.
and she's been my friend for many years. And then I have a boyfriend who's high functioning autistic, and I didn't know he was autistic until he came and told me. And I was like very shocked that me, as a person with a disability who's an advocate, is dating somebody who has autism and exploring an option, like exploring new horizons that I never knew that he knew so much that I'm learning from him.
Mhm.
So the way that I'm seeing things right now in the community as an advocate for 21 years and going back to school to do my disability studies program is to see different options out there and working with the population of people who have autism. And it makes it clear just because you got autism, it doesn't make you a weaker person. It makes you a stronger person because you can teach others what you would like out there. So I think your whole presentation was cool. And I'm thinking right now that now I see what autism can do for a person out there with so many options.
I appreciate that so much. And yeah, I appreciate you and your perspective on this with all your lived experience. That is really cool. You know, people with autism are all around us and they're offering so many incredible things to this world. It's really important to keep thinking about. And yeah, there is a spectrum as much as now the definitions they try to make us specify if it's high or low support needs. We're all in this together. But there I think is some value in saying there's a some people with low support needs. And it really, to me, comes with just a whole different set of challenges because a lot of it is that people can't tell from the jump that that person has autism, and that can be really difficult to deal with. What have I seen with autism on TikTok and the impact of AI? Maggie, that is an awesome question. I can't answer it. I haven't seen that. I can't lie. I'm not really on TikTok. I made a TikTok for this project because I thought it was very interesting, but I am not like your TikTok guy scrolling. I'll scroll on Instagram Reels sometimes, but not so much that I've seen any autism AI stuff. We're definitely in dangerous territory with AI and TikTok and Instagram Reels where they can make things that look very real. And so that they often will make them to cater to things that you'll want to see. So you have to be careful. But I can't say I've seen anything just yet around autism and AI on TikTok. But that could be a cool follow-up project if I find some stuff. Kathy says we all tend to self-diagnose no matter what diagnosis may be. TikTok may make you feel like part of a group or sense of relief you're not alone. Totally, totally. And it's important, right? It's important to feel like part of a group. It's important to feel not alone. Like these are not things I'm trying to talk down on people for wanting that diagnosis. Like they're trying to fit somewhere, and that's something we all want as humans. Yeah, but thank you for saying that because sometimes there is a real positive light that you can spin on there. I really appreciate all you guys joining today. I know, wow, we have Don Fittipaldi, one of my favorite behavior analysts. Uh, we yeah, I really appreciate all of you. The Staten Island autism community raised me. I'm really happy to be able to present this to you guys today. I hope it was fun or interesting or both. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we're done, right? We're gonna end it with everybody. Yay, thank you very much for all the information, a lot to think about. And thank you, Mikey, for presenting this. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very
Hey,
informative.
so
Thank
just remember to go to siddc.org to learn about what we do there. Kathy and I are both from the Grace Foundation. We're part of that as well. Other agencies, Gina has a gym. She's part of that as well. A lot of people that are um, on this Zoom today are part of the council, but if you're not, please go to siddc.org and join. We have a resource fair coming up in April, so check that out. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it very much. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I'm ending.